Hey guys, it's Sylvia from Backyard Brushes in Fountain City, Wisconsin. And in today's video, we are exploring sunflowers because they're one of my favorite things in the fall. And I just wanted to show you real quick. The first one is really easy peasy. And once you get the hang of it, which shouldn't take long at all, you can start experimenting. And on this one, I actually added a spindle to it for a stem, and I just used a larger circle. So shall we get started? For the first sunflower, I'm going to start out using an 8x8 wood canvas board using DIY paint and Farm Fresh. I'm just going to paint the center of the board. As the center is drying, I'm going to use burnt umber and a basic acrylic paint. First, I'm going to take a small edging brush and I'm going to paint the inside edging of the wood panel. Once the inside edging is complete, I'm just going to grab a brush and do the front panel with the same burnt umber paint. I'm then going to grab a baby wipe and I'm just going to wipe off the excess paint, and then that also helps show the wood grain of the canvas board. Next, I'm going to use Sweet Pickins milk paint in Red Wagon, and I'm going to mix up a batch of paint to use to help cover the brown. To mix the paint, I'm going to use equal parts water to the powdered paint and then stir for 2 minutes. I'm not exactly perfect in my measuring. I just kind of go for an estimate of half and half. I tend to use a little bit more powder than water. I like it just a little bit thicker. As I've read, the little bit thicker when you're using the milk paint, the more chance of chippiness, and I really do want that chippiness effect. And with milk paint, it can be kind of spontaneous and you really don't know what the outcome's going to be, so I just kind of tend to use a little bit more paint, a little bit thicker than a melted milkshake. Then I'm just going to stir it for 2 minutes. Once I have my paint mixed up, I'm just going to grab my little heater and I'm going to warm up the canvas board. I don't know if this really works or not, but in my mind it should. The thought is that the heat helps increase the chance of the chippiness. So I figure if I add the heat first and after painting, it should increase my chance of chippiness. And that's really the effect I'm going for. So just to show you my process, I'm using the back of the board because it's easier to see. When I'm creating, I also like to complete the back. That way it looks like a completely finished product. Once everything is done and dried, I am going to grab my biscuits. Now these aren't like dog biscuits or anything you would eat. They're little wood biscuits used in building materials and construction. I can pick them up at the local stores or on Amazon. The size that I'm using is 0, and I also have a 1-inch wood circle. I will be using 32 wood biscuits for the petals of the flower. I will need 16 for the bottom and 16 for the top. So I'm just going to count out 32 wood biscuits. I'm then going to grab the same burnt umber paint with my baby wipes, and I'm going to start staining the little wood circle and all 16 wood biscuits. Once I've completely stained all the wood biscuits in the center circle, I'm going to grab the Sweet Pickins Milk Paint in Sunflower, and following the same method as I used before, I'm going to mix up some paint. Once the paint's mixed up, I'm going to individually paint each petal. Once the petal's dry, I am going to give it a second coat. I'm not going to bore you with that, and we'll zip right through to the next process. After my biscuits, aka petals, are completely dried after 2 coats of paint, I'm going to grab my Tim Holtz Distressing Ink and my little dauber, and I'm just going to daub over the edges of the petals just to give it kind of that worn vintage look. Once I've completed distressing the petals with the ink, now I just have to arrange the petals on the board. I usually start by taking the first 4 petals and forming a T. Once I feel that I have it centerized, I can start adding the other petals and help fill in the flower. Using Titebond glue, I am going to adhere my first layer of petals to the board. I'm now going to put a little bit of the Titebond glue down and start placing my second layer of petals, going in between and on top of the first layer. And then I'm just going to add the wood circle using the Titebond glue to the center. When I have a little leakage of glue, I just grab a baby wipe and I dab it up. And I probably should have done this before I added my flour, but I got ahead of myself. But I'm just going to grab my sanding block and I'm just going to lightly sand my border. After sanding it, I did wipe it down with a baby wipe just to remove some of that dust. I'm now going to grab DIY Dark and Decrepit liquid patina, and I'm going to cover the outside frame over the red. This will also help seal the frame. I'm just going to grab a brush and cover the red wagon with the Dark and Decrepit. And then before it dries, I'm going to use a baby wipe and I'm going to wipe it off. This will seal the frame. I did forget to seal the rest of the sunflower, so after this all dried, I did take it outside and spray it with Rust-Oleum clear coat. For our second sunflower, I used 3 picket fence boards from our local hardware store. I had Googled a sunflower petal and I printed it off on regular copy paper and created my own pattern to fit the fence board. I then traced 1 petal on the fence board. Once I was done tracing the first petal, I took the wood out to my garage and using my bandsaw, I cut out the first petal. If you don't have a bandsaw, you can also use a jigsaw to cut out the petal. I then used my first petal as my main pattern and I traced out 15 more petals on the fence boards. After cutting my 16 petals, I also cut an 8-inch round for the middle, and I had on hand a 10-inch round that I'm just going to use as the base. I'm now grabbing the burnt umber acrylic paint, and I am going to stain my circles and all my petals using a baby wipe. Once the petals and the rounds are completely stained with the acrylic paint, I am going to grab the Sweet Pickins milk paint in the sunflower color and mix it up just like I did in the previous video clip. Using the sunflower milk paint, I am going to give each leaf a coat of paint on the front and back. For the second coat, I'm going to use my heat gun, and 2 leaves at a time, I'm going to heat the leaves up first. I don't know if it really works or not, but in my mind it does, hoping to increase my chance of chippiness. And then you can definitely tell the difference between the leaf with one coat and the leaf with the second coat after the heat gun, and you can see some of that chippiness coming through. Once all 16 petals have been painted, I'm going to grab my sanding block and I'm just going to rough up my petals. Next, I'm going to grab the DIY Dark and Decrepit liquid patina, and I'm going to give each petal a coat, and I'm going to wipe it off with a baby wipe before it dries. The DIY liquid patina, Dark and Decrepit, also acts as a protectant coat over the paint. After sealing all 16 petals with the liquid patina, it's time to assemble the sunflower. I'm going to use the same method as I did with the smaller petals in the previous clip. I'm going to start out with a T, and I'm going to align my first layer of petals. I'm aligned, I realized I forgot the base, so I'm going to grab the 10-inch round and I'm going to realign the petals on the round. I'm then using the Titebond glue and gluing the petals in place for the first layer. Once I have my petals in place, I'm going to grab my nail gun and I'm going to give each petal a quick nailing just for a little added security. Using the Titebond glue, I'm going to glue on the second layer of petals, placing them in between the first layer. And I apologize, the camera only captured half of the flower. Once the petals are glued on, I'm just going to grab my nail gun and give each petal a nail for a little extra added security. Using the Titebond glue, I'm going to glue on the 8-inch round for the center of the flower. For project 3, I started out by cutting a 1x3 1/2-inch thick board using a 45-degree angle on my miter saw and cut the wood pieces for the petals. For the back petals, I cut 8 pieces and they were 8 inches long from tip to tip with a 45-degree angle. For the second layer of petals, I cut 7 inches from tip to tip with a 45-degree angle. For the center piece, I'll be using a 3-inch wood slice. I'm going to use burnt umber in acrylic paint. Using a baby wipe, I'm going to stain the circle. Using Queen's Bee by DIY, I'm going to paint all 16 of the petals. I then decided my flower needed a larger center. So I cut 1-inch lath, 3 inches from tip to tip with a 45-degree angle. I then stained the pieces with the brown paint and the baby white method. I then used the sanding block and I sanded down the edges of all the petals and the brown pieces for the center. I cut a 1x6 in a square piece with my miter saw. I used the baby white method and the brown paint, and I stained the wood block. The wood block will be the backing to the flower. Using the yardstick, I am going to draw a X from corner to corner to find the middle of my block. Once I have my center established, I'm just going to take some extra wood I have and I'm going to lay it down around the wood center. This is just going to help support the pieces while I lay them down. I'm going to start off using the 8-inch pieces for the first layer of the petals. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together. I'm going to use the center as my base and I'm going to go around in sort of a circular fashion, and I'm going to place the short end next to the long end and go short, long, short, long, short, long, all the way around the flower. I'm going to pull out my petals slightly, and I am going to use the Tight Bond glue, and I am going to adhere the first layer of petals to the backing. To seal my paint. So I'm going to grab the Big Top and I'm going to give the first layer of petals a coat of Big Top, and then I'm going to give all the other petals a coating of the Big Top too, just to help seal the paint. I'm now going to apply the second layer of petals in the same fashion that I applied the first layer. And again, I followed the same method with the small brown pieces. I do have to apologize. I did not get on camera gluing the centerpiece on. However, I just used the Type Bond glue and I glued on the centerpiece. I also think that the sunflower is going to be offered as a workshop at my DIY studio. Okay, you guys, so what did you think? Which one was your favorite? I don't think I have a favorite because I just love sunflowers and creating them, and they all serve different purposes. But I'd love to know which one was your favorite and if you're going to attempt to make any of these. If you do find inspiration and you like what you're seeing, please hit subscribe and follow me on my journey. Thank you.